Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, breakdancers. It's time to quit all that popping and locking. Get up off the floor and put away that cardboard. It's time to move to a different kind of groove. It's time for Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Now, in today's episode, we're all about solutions, and we may just have the solution to the future problem of access to fresh water here, folks. Get ready for that one. We've also something of a challenge for people who are a little bit anxious about visiting the dentist. And continuing on that theme, for those of you who have been holding out for the past 2 or 3 decades for the next revolution in toothbrush technology, oh boy, do we have news for you. But now, the man with all the news, welcome to the microphone, it's Matthew Dickerson.
Well, I was going to do a bit of spinning on my head just to start off the show with some breaking, but I'm a bit worried.
It's not a very visual medium, is it?
It's not really.
I could just make commentary of it, perhaps.
Well, you could. You can say, wow, look at that. But I'm a bit worried about concussion protocols these days. I'm not sure if we see a lot of changes in a lot of different sports where we can't do things with our head, which is good, quite sensible. Let's look after our heads. But for breakdancers, I'm not sure whether or not there's some issues there with
head and neck.
Neck's a good point too, but even the head part doesn't sound like it's great. I haven't done it, I must admit. I was thinking about it for your intro. I was going to
I've
just
been talking
dive down
about
the
it
floor.
since about 1983, so yeah.
You reckon if there's going to be any damage there? Maybe there. But I've had a couple of interesting ones this week. I had a few flights. I ended up in 3 capital cities this week for a range of different reasons. And one of the organisations that was getting me to speak at a certain conference, I often leave the booking of the tickets to the organisations organising me to go there. I just think you're organising it, you book the tickets, all the rest of it, that's easy. And they made a minor mistake. Rather than booking the ticket for Matthew Dickerson, they booked it for Dickerson Matthew. Common mistake, because a lot of people are called Dickerson as a first name. So
are they?
No.
No.
So for whatever reason, the person booking it, obviously they go to
Apologies
a junior.
to any Dickersons out there that have that as their first name. But, yeah.
But I got the ticket. I went to check in for the flight and I couldn't check in. I was putting the details in. I couldn't check in. And I sent a quick email. I said, I've got the details here about the flight, but it's not working. And I could see the name was written as Dickerson Matthew, but I assumed in their system it was just sitting as Dickerson Matthew. I didn't have the actual ticket from the airline. It was just their booking system. And they said, try Matthew as the surname. I went, sure. And I tried Matthew and that let it go through. But I was a bit worried because you do get some check-in counter people who are a bit pedantic. And if I showed my ID with Matthew Dickerson, if they were being really pedantic, they might say, sorry, sir, that's not you. And one of those flights was about 6:30 a.m.
Well, imagine if you did have a name, like your full name was two first names. I'm speaking from experience here. Anyway, you were saying?
Well, imagine the people that have got
so
two
anyone
names the
called
same.
Eddie James out there, my apologies for them mixing you up.
Well, you could do that, but I always wonder about the people that are called Andrew Andrews or Peter Peters.
Yeah.
That gets interesting, yeah. But anyway,
sorry.
So Dickerson Matthew, that was a problem. So I said, I think we probably should just fix the ticket because it should be okay. Surely someone at the check-in counter is going to understand that, yes, I can see your licence and the name's reversed, but that's pretty obvious. That's who it should be. But I just, again, didn't want to take the chance. Changing the ticket name from Dickerson Matthew to Matthew Dickerson proved to be about a 6-hour process for them. It was a drama. Anyway, I got that sorted out. But then one of the things coming back from Adelaide, it was one of the places I was coming back from, when I turned up there, it was a 6 a.m. flight. And so I turned up nice and early. I was there at the airport at about 10 past, 5:15, thinking I had 15 minutes up my sleeve before the check-in baggage closed. But I got there and I went, wow, some big lineups this morning. I didn't think it was that busy at Adelaide Airport.
Not a good sign.
Not a good sign because the automatic bag drop on the blink. And there were people with yellow vests running around everywhere trying to fix something. And I went, this is going to be a bit ugly. And so the only way they were taking baggage was through the oversized baggage counter. So you can imagine the lineup at the oversized baggage counter was huge. And I started thinking about it and I went, we've got so many efficient systems of how we do things now, but if they stop, it's chaos. Absolute chaos. And that's what it was this morning. It was just lineups, 100 metres long, just chaos there. And some people were on a 6 a.m. flight. They were on a 6:30 or a 7 a.m. flight, whatever it might have been. But you didn't really feel like saying, can I push in here because I'm on a slightly earlier than flight than you, because that didn't go down that well.
Not when there's a big queue involved.
That's right. Trying to get all that sorted out for the airport was obviously a bit of a drama, but we do rely on those systems so much.
We do.
And it just seems to be...
Well, that glitch we had a week or so ago, about a month now, where we had that glitch that occurred with the update.
Yep.
What was the name of the company? I can't remember. Yeah, CrowdStrike, that's right. And just everyone just went into meltdown.
So things work perfectly when they do.
When they work perfectly.
But then one hiccup. Now, one of the things that people then say is, well, you should get rid of all those automatic baggage drop-offs.
Let's go back to a card system and a conveyor belt that's operated by hand or
That's
handless.
right, maybe. And so that's the commentary you hear around those type of things. I did see a little bit of that social media commentary around Adelaide Airport, but just because you get a hiccup somewhere doesn't mean you throw out the whole system.
No.
But it does also show how much we rely on those automated systems.
Yeah. Well, enough with all this meandering. It's time to get our stride on, folks. Now, this first story I absolutely love. Since the days of my youth, playing cricket barefoot in the backyard, I've been trained to spot a prickle in the lawn from about 40 paces. Now, I'll pounce like a pouncer on that thing and tear that sucker out by the roots with my bare hands. As a homeowner, I would spend afternoons in the springtime lying in the prone position, tearing up weeds from the lawn manually, one by one, until the front and backyards resembled the fairway of the 11th at Port Augusta. Now I live on 4 acres, and it feels like I have Mount Everest to climb. But imagine my euphoria when I heard about this first story about a weed-spotting robot, and get this, folks, it's armed with a blowtorch. Matt, it feels like the A-team just broke into someone's garden shed and went crazy. I pity the fool.
That's right. What could go wrong? A robot dog with a blowtorch, and off you go. Now, I do want to say this is Spot, our good friend Spot. We have spoken about Spot a number of times, and Spot, developed by Boston Dynamics, is a fantastic idea where Boston Dynamics have said, we'll develop the base. We'll develop a robot dog that can do a bunch of stuff.
And feel free to attach blowtorches to it.
Or whatever you might. And we've spoken about a number of different attachments that people have put on. So you've got police forces have been using it. You've got scientists have been using it to go in and check radiation, for example, in certain locations. They've been used for search and rescue, whole range of different things. But I don't think to this day we've had a blowtorch example. I did think, first of all,
fans of the A-team would just be going off right now. This is fantastic.
Well, they'd have a flamethrower, wouldn't they? They wouldn't have a blowtorch. They'd have a flamethrower, which is probably a bit scary as well. But the idea here is fantastic, where some people are concerned about herbicides, and I don't want to get in a discussion about various herbicides and whether or not they might be carcinogenic or harmful or all the rest of it. There's Supreme judges or Supreme Courts that are looking at all those things as we speak.
Yeah.
But it probably makes sense if you can get rid of weeds with some other method besides either herbicide or you on your hands and knees going around pulling up weeds by the roots.
It was therapy, actually, but anyway.
It probably is. So what they've done in this example, they've said, Spot, you can walk around. We're happy with your ability to traverse an area. Let's give you some cameras, let's give you some AI, and let's give you a blowtorch, a propane-powered blowtorch. And your job is to go and find weeds and then hit them. Now, the first thing I thought of is in a farmer's crop, going out and hitting weeds with a blowtorch sounds like something that's going to lead to a bushfire. It doesn't sound like a great outcome.
Not want to do it during the summer.
No, that's right. But it doesn't actually burn. It doesn't incinerate the weed. What it does, it goes and looks for weeds, finds a weed, and then hits it with enough heat on the centre of the weed that it effectively suppresses the growth of that weed for several weeks, giving time for the crop around that weed to basically take over.
Wow.
So then when it starts to get the stage where it's recovered from its whack with a bit of propane-powered heat, it then, I've been choked out.
Yeah, it's got to be competing with established other plants.
Correct. Yeah, so I like that idea. So it's not starting a fire. It's not burning your crop down. It's not incinerating things. It's just going and hitting with enough heat. So it sounds pretty good. They've done some tests, and they did some tests in a cotton field in Texas. And there were sunflower weeds, there were giant ragweed weeds in amongst the cotton field. And they found in the testing they did about 95% accuracy with identifying weeds. Now, I don't know whether the 5% that were inaccurate were the cotton crop they were hitting or whether it just missed some weeds. But 95% accuracy they claimed with that, so that sounds good. And then it basically went around and did that. But part of the issue so far is the time frame it can do that. So 40 minutes is what it'll do on one battery, and then it's got to come back, be recharged or swap battery. So they're looking at adding a battery attachment to it as well to go for a bit longer than 40 minutes. I don't know how much of an area it's going to cover in 40 minutes. I didn't find that in the research, but 40 minutes, you can imagine as a dog, it's walking along at a dog walking speed. Yeah, so it's going to cover a reasonable amount. The other one they played with, and they haven't actually gone further with this, again, it sounds like something either law enforcement or the A-Team could use. They've got a 10,000 volt zap they can give to a weed. So sounds like a taser for a weed. But again, go and find the weed, hit it with 10,000 volts. That'll suppress that weed, let the crop around it compete, and basically win that.
I'd like to see that happen from a distance. And just laser bolts coming out of it.
At night time.
Oh, sorry, lightning bolts, I should say.
Yeah, at night time in particular. Just go out there and you see a zap here and there. And,
so cool.
And you want some sound effects as well. You want the weed going, ah. So these are some modern ways that we might be hitting weeds and might be taking care of our crops in a non-herbicide way. And herbicides, well, apart from the potential safety issues, and I don't have any data to back all of that up, so I won't talk about that, but we do know you also get super weeds that become resistant to certain herbicides. Yep. So then you've got to develop more herbicides to get past the super weed part of it.
And anything that requires a bit of spraying is going to get some drift as well.
Yeah. Actually, I have read a bit on that. Just some of the drift you get is quite incredible how far that herbicide drift goes. So you're right. So a whole range of issues potentially there. Propane-powered dog walking the field. You can just imagine it, can't you? Spot, off you go. Have some fun.
Hitting it right where it hurts. Now, are you one to tense up at the sound of the high-pitched scream of a dentist drill? Granted, nobody loves a stint in the dentist chair. It's a must-do more than anything else. And the diligent among us dutifully surrender every 6 to 12 months for the sake of our long-term dental health. Well, if you're one of the brave, for whom a trip to the dentist is a walk in the park, and the sound of the drill is neither here nor there for you, well, how would you feel if your next crown was planted by a robot? Matt, open wide, here comes the robot dentist.
For some people that feel a bit uneasy, do you think this would make them feel more comfortable?
No.
Just imagine you're sitting in the chair, your mouth's wide open, and in comes a robotic arm with a spinning piece of metal on the end. And just to get you fired up, as it's a metre or two away, it just... Now,
we're going to assume that any other humans in the room are going to have some empathy and going to take some care, but a robot, that's cold.
It is, isn't it? Now, if you think about it logically, it's going to be better.
Don't move.
Well, that's the first part. It's got to be better because a robot can do things more accurately. Now, in the tests they've been doing, putting a crown on a tooth, for example, normally, apparently, that's a 2-hour, 2-session process to put a crown on a tooth. In this process with a robot dentist, 15 minutes.
Oh,
so
wow.
More accurate and faster. So that sounds fantastic. So bring it on, you say. But
drive-through service.
That's right. But when you're sitting there in the chair with this thing coming at you, that might get a bit scary. Now, at this stage, they're still leaving a physical human robot in the room. So that makes you feel a bit more comfortable.
Sorry, a physical human robot?
A physical human dentist. A physical human dentist in the room, sitting in the corner, presumably reading the newspaper while the robot dentist does its job. But you'd feel a bit more comfortable if there's a human there just
if the robot
watching.
Goes haywire and starts drilling into all sorts of different parts of your body.
That's right. You start having things come out the side of your cheek or nose rings put in or something. So hopefully that's good. But the funny part is we do have robot surgeons now. I had a friend of mine who had a prostate operation and he said it was all done via a robot. And I started thinking, why are we okay and comfortable with that compared to the robot dentist just feels a bit uncomfortable? But I think the difference there is you're knocked out. When you're having a prostate operation done, you completely pass it. You don't know about it. You just get told about it afterwards and you go, okay. Whereas in the dentist chair, you're watching what's happening up close.
Yes.
Now, I do think of one big advantage. Presumably the robot dentist is not going to chat to you and expect you to answer with fingers in your mouth going, like a normal dentist does. So that's one advantage. Surely the accuracy makes it better. They also are using 3D data they capture of your mouth. So apparently they're using better. Normally, say, have an X-ray that a dentist might look at to see what might be happening in your mouth, but this is a 3D capturing of your mouth. So that's more accurate. So that means they can get to where they need to go better. They can get better look where cavities might be and address those better. So lots of advantages from a technical point of view, but even though I know all of that, if I'm sitting in the chair watching this dentist come at me that's a robot, anyway, at this stage,
so
you'll be
it
happy.
takes a lot of psychology to just get your mind through that.
It does. Now, you'll be happy to know it's still awaiting FDA approval in the US at the moment. So they can't do it. They've been doing testing. They've been using prototypes, but nothing approved yet. So you can't go in. You're not going to see this happen tomorrow. And presumably by the time the FDA gives approval for it, it's been through enough tests that you can be pretty comfortable it's okay.
So what we're doing is we're just introducing you to the idea. So when it finally does hit, you'll be a little bit more comfortable with it.
You'll go,
You'll see this. It's been coming for a while.
I heard about that years ago. It's all okay.
I think we'll be fine by now. Yeah.
Why are you still standing here, human dentist? Where's my robot dentist to come?
With the Paris Olympics done and dusted and records broken left, right and centre, clear a space on the mantelpiece for yet another record. That of social media posts, folks. Probably no surprises here in terms of volume, given that it's how we communicate these days and the fact that there was no shortage of big stories and drawn-out drama out of those Olympics. And of course, sadly, the trolls and the online abuse was out of control. Phenomenal volumes of information peppered with the sound of idiots trying to be noticed. Matt, AI was actually enlisted to block these trolls. How did it go and what are the details?
We do change our mind a bit with AI, don't we? One week it's AI is going to take over, and then the next week AI is going to save us all. We found during the Olympics, the 2024 Paris Olympics, that they generated about 500 million social media posts. Yeah. I still struggle with the number billion. It's just a big number.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Trying to comprehend that number is pretty scary. So IOC did engage an AI algorithm to actually go and help some of this. Now, we've got a new estimate in the SI system, or a new number in the SI system.
I love these new units.
That's right.
Excellent.
Swimming
Is this
pools.
going to do swimming pools?
That's
yeah,
right. Swimming pools we know is the standard measurement for volume.
Good.
So in this particular example, the IOC said that each social media post, if it was about 10 words long, then those 500 million social media posts would equate to a body of text 638 times longer than the King James Bible.
Wow.
So the King James Bible is the new...
How many football fields is that?
Yeah, that's right. The King James Bible is apparently the new way of measuring how long a body of text is. So I had to look it up because I thought, let's put this in perspective. So the King James Bible, apparently, the standard King James Bible, is about 783,137 words.
Right.
So multiply that by 638 and you get how many words supposedly
a lot of words
were posted about the Olympics. So there's a number, which I haven't done the calculation on that one for you.
A lot of doom scrolling there.
That's a lot of doom scrolling. So they said that we just couldn't possibly look through all of that by ourselves. And you think about it, the Olympics is something that's quite fascinating. Once every 4 years, in some sports, not all sports, but once every 4 years, you've got your chance to shine. There's a huge amount of pressure. And for some of those events, it's over and done with pretty quickly. So a huge amount of pressure. Right. You need to perform at the moment when you need to perform.
And if people are like me, they become experts in those sports. Just briefly, I was an expert in pretty much every sport except for skateboarding. I had no idea what the commentators were talking about there.
That's right. But then you've often got young people. Skateboarding, perfect example. Australia had our youngest ever gold medalist in any sport in skateboarding, so a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
So when you think about a huge amount of pressure on someone potentially very young, that you've got your one chance to shine every 4 years, and then add to that some experts, correct, who might be less than complimentary about something you've done, your form, whatever it might be. So that can lead to some pretty severe issues. So with 15,000 athletes, 2,000 officials, what the IOC did is they said, we're going to engage AI to go through and look at this. Now, they got agreement from the big social media organisations. You've got TikTok and Meta and X, and I was almost going to say Twitter then, X and various ones there, so that they basically were on board to say, if you identify things that we need to take down, to block, then we're happy to play ball with you, which is fair enough. Yeah. Because you are talking about people at a fragile point in their lives, and mental health obviously is a big issue.
Very vulnerable, yeah.
So with all of that, they basically used AI. They kept monitoring all of these different posts, alerted the various social media platforms about inappropriate posts, and then took those down pretty quickly. So the result of all of that was it wasn't too bad. So they found lots of rubbish out there. They found lots of abuse. They found lots of things that were inappropriate, but it was taken down pretty quickly. And AI helped with this because there's no way, I don't know that you could even employ enough people to go through and look at that. The really tricky part about this was that if you wanted to look for an athlete's name, so let's go and look for an athlete's name in social media posts, it can identify that pretty easily, and there's some search tools that will do that okay. But when there are so many variations of that, so many variations of a name, so many references to someone that aren't necessarily their exact name, that's where AI was used, just looking for different variations, looking for context around that to then say, this is an inappropriate comment about this person that might refer to this particular athlete over here. Yeah, so cool. All of that, pretty big body of work. But again, I can say that in this case, AI did a good job, and there are athletes out there that never knew something was said about them, and that's fair enough. Because one of the things I think about with social media, when we didn't have social media, you and I at the pub said, oh, did you see that 100-metre event that one of those athletes did? That was terrible. Yeah. And that's where it stayed.
Yeah, that's right.
But when you have social media and you do it and it gets back to that person, when we're talking at the pub, we probably don't really want that athlete knowing what our thoughts are because we figure they're doing their best and they didn't quite perform the way they would have liked to have done.
And also the anonymity of being able to be a keyboard warrior. You can shoot whatever barbs you want from 1,000 kilometres away, can't you?
I did see someone say it's easy. Just make sure that everyone's got to have some form of ID before they can register on social media. Well, that's great. But unfortunately, that's not the way the world works at the moment, so it would be nice. So anyway, AI did come to the rescue. Lots of athletes out there. Well done. You all tried your best, I'm sure. You did whatever you could do. And guess what? I'm not an Olympian. So who am I to say someone doesn't deserve to be there or someone isn't good enough or whatever, because they're an Olympian and I'm not, and good luck to them, I say.
Bingo. Now, in the context of education and in the name of maintaining integrity in assessment tasks, AI was a massive spanner in the works 2 years ago. Determining how well a student can research and write has become something of a nightmare. To date, there have been some efforts to catch students in the act, and now some teachers are even looking to revolutionise the way students are assessed and actually embracing AI. Now, if you can't beat them, join them, so they say. But Matt, OpenAI thinks it can save teachers after all and catch out the cheats.
We've been through this a little bit when AI was first coming along, ChatGPT was first coming along. We went, how is this going to work in schools? And I remember we did the little test.
There was just this dead-eye look in some teachers' face where they're just going, well, I can't do it. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's right. And so we did a test, if you remember, when this was all starting, ChatGPT was just coming out, and we took an assessment, a typical assessment question, and asked ChatGPT for the answer. And I asked ChatGPT for the answer about 5 times. And I got 5 variations of that answer. So it might have been a good bluff tool to stand at the front of the classroom and say, okay, here's your next assessment task. I've already asked ChatGPT for the answer, and here's the answer sitting in my hand, folks. So if you want to go and use ChatGPT, I'll know that you've used it because here's the answer. Now, that might have bluffed some, but if any of the kids were clever enough to listen to Tech Talk, they would have known that the answer you get is different each time, so it's a bit harder.
Yeah. And there are so many different AI engines as well.
Well, that's right, exactly right. So OpenAI has actually developed a method. They previously developed a method to detect AI-written text, and they believe they've got it within 99.9% accuracy.
Wow.
So not too bad.
Yeah.
But you can't use it. It's an internal tool they have, and you can't actually use that tool. Now, some people within OpenAI say, we should release this to the world. You should be able to say, yes, that was written by OpenAI or by ChatGPT. But at this stage, it's all kept internal. There was a survey by the Centre for Democracy and Technology, and they found that 59% of middle and high school teachers believe students use AI for schoolwork. If there was a tool out there that could identify it easily, would that stop them using that? And you'd have to think, yes. You'd have to think that if I'm a student and I can use ChatGPT now, there's no way of knowing.
I still think you're going to get a reasonable percentage that are going to run the gauntlet and just see
if you can really detect it.
Yeah.
And the other problem is if it's 99.9% accurate, then you accuse me of that, then I dig my heels in and say, no, where's your proof? Well, here's this tool that said, well, that's only 99.9% accurate, sir. I can't say, or you can't say definitely that I used OpenAI. I'm saying no. So maybe you're right. Maybe there still will.
Well, there's some big institutions out there that are now throwing up their hands saying, well, we can't beat them, so we're going to join and we're going to see how we can incorporate it. And when you think about it, any student today is going to go into a world where OpenAI, sorry, not just OpenAI, but AI is the new search engine. It's the new way we do Googling.
Yep.
And so, just so long as the person can discern what is good and what is bad in the writing, then I think that's probably where we need to go.
Well, making sure that it is logical and
Legitimate.
sensible. Yeah, and using it potentially, as you say, more for a research tool rather than for the final product. And I spoke to you about a month or two ago when I was doing some programming, and I was using AI because some of the various syntax for programming has to be perfect. And remembering some of that syntax when I haven't done it for a while was a bit hard, but I'd go and say to OpenAI, give me a module that'll do this, and I'd do that, and it wasn't perfect, but all right, there's a syntax for that, and I can change that, and wow, that saved me some time rather than going looking up the exact syntax for certain commands. And so in the real world, I was using it to make my little job I had to get done a bit quicker and easier. So why wouldn't you? Why would I say, no, I am not using AI to go and write that little bit of code for me because, well, why not? Well, I couldn't think of a reason. Why not? So let's go and use it. So essentially, you're right. There are some different ones, different concepts or different ideas about it. But the fact that OpenAI has got a tool that can detect it, I think that's the crucial part here.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And when they release that, if they release that, or if some other third-party company comes along, and a lot of it's to do with watermarking as well. So if I have a picture drawn by OpenAI, it can be watermarked. It could easily have some pixels in there that would make it obvious that it was done by AI or created by some other tool. And to take out that watermark, it's pretty hard because it's already embedded into the picture. But how do you watermark text? How do you have some text there that says this is generated by OpenAI? You can have text in the middle that says generated by OpenAI or generated by AI. Now, that's fine if I submitted the whole text as my assignment and then halfway through it says generated by AI. I've got you here. But if you're half sensible, you'd read that and you'd modify it and you'd remove the bit that says generated by AI.
Yeah.
I don't know how it does actually say that it's definitely generated by AI. Maybe it could look through all the generation and see if anything matched with that. But even that's not a guarantee because you could still write something that sounds the same as what AI might create. So it's difficult. And maybe the embracing is the solution. Well,
this is, I think it's a prime example of you build a better mousetrap and Mother Nature will build a bigger mouse. And so, I wonder how hard we need to fight against this and whether or not we learn how to work with it now. It's just the Pandora's box has been opened and we need to be able to find how we're going to manage it. Now, the first human to be implanted with a Neuralink chip, pardon me, was way back in May. Boy, how time flies, huh? Well, if you're hoping to be the second, then you've missed your chance, folks. It seems that the folks at Neuralink have got something of a bit of a roll on. Matt, what are the developments for the Buzz Aldrin of brain chip receivers?
Well, I'm disappointed that you didn't get a call because I submitted your details.
Oh, you did?
And thought,
thank you for that.
This would be good for Tech Talk to have someone on Tech Talk. That's right, that had a Neuralink chip installed. But you obviously didn't receive a phone call.
They just do it in your sleep, don't they? They just creep into your house and next thing you know, you've woken
So maybe, did you have a bit of a sore head the other day? Maybe they did. So you're right. The first person was Nolan Arbau, and he had the Neuralink chip installed. And he got to the stage where he could use a mouse up, down, left, right on a screen by thinking about it. So pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's right. So it was always going to get better as time went on. So they called for volunteers. They obviously picked someone else besides you for whatever reason. And that person has now had the Neuralink chip installed. I don't know this person's name at this stage, but the initial results show that it's a little bit better. It's had a little bit more of an uptake than the first result. So there's 1,024 electrodes in the Neuralink chip. About 400 of those are active in the second person, so about 39%. In the first one, about 15% were active. So that's an improvement straight away. So more than double those electrodes are basically working. And what they're effectively doing is they're listening out for your brain to do something. So when we think about things, when we're talking, as we're talking at the moment, we're thinking about what we're going to have for lunch, whatever we're doing, there are certain brain waves emitted. And we've talked before about a helmet-type device you can put on to pick up those brain waves, but that's got to get through your skull and it's got to get to the sensor there. But if you really want to get...
It's also really clunky and clumsy and...
walking around the house with a big helmet on. If you want to get something more accurate, you get right into the brain and start to get those electrodes picking up what's happening, that activity on your brain, which sounds fascinating, sounds scary. we don't really understand the complete functionality of the brain as we stand. Memory, we don't really completely understand memory. We know repetition is good for memory, but we still don't understand how we store stuff in our memory. It's quite fascinating. So with these chips, it all sounds pretty scary, but maybe in a couple of decades' time, it'll just be the standard thing. Yeah, it'll be basically you get your chip installed. Don't worry about remembering friends' birthdates or what date the Second World War was, because you've got access to all that information via your chip. Use your brain for creative things, not remembering stuff, because it's pretty boring, and we're not great at remembering stuff. Our memory is pretty flexible in remembering stuff, but we're good at creating stuff. So let's use it for more of that and less of the memory stuff.
Well, the other thing our brain's really good at, or neuroplastic, or brain nerves is what I'm trying to say, is that the brain is very flexible and can rewire itself really well. So I'm just wondering, if with a Neuralink chip or whatever, whether or not there might be applications in the future for amending Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and things like that, sort of rehabilitation stuff after brain injury.
See, one of the things that I find fascinating, if we go back 100 years, some of that's considered intelligent, in inverted commas, 100 years ago, I think is different to what intelligence might be looked at now. Because 100 years ago, if you could remember stuff, it was pretty hard to look up stuff. It was pretty hard to get access to information quickly. You might have had books and dictionaries and encyclopedias, but that was pretty clumsy. But someone sitting around a classroom, a pub, just in a research lab saying, this is what we do because of this and this, and I remember this from this other information that I have. They go, wow, that person is so intelligent, they remembered those other things there. Now, we don't need memory as much. And this is the thing, I think we are almost...
Well, the classic example of that is people who come to me saying, I can recite the periodic table. It's like, well, wow, you don't need to do that. What can you do with the stuff that's on the periodic table, though? That's the intelligence.
Well, that's the perfect example. So I think we're redefining intelligence because it's no longer about remembering the periodic table or remembering pi to 40 decimal places. It's about the application of that, and that's a different skill. So someone that might have been intelligent 100 years ago might fast forward to today's world, and they go, I can remember the periodic table. We go, yeah, it's easy. I can look it up on my phone and have it there in front of me. I can have all the atomic weights, and I can have all the information on the periodic table. So big deal. I've got more information instantly, and I don't have to waste brain space remembering it. Yeah. But can I use that brain space? I'm not sure if we have brain space, but can I use that brain space for something better? Yeah. Can I work out some way of putting things together in a better way? So this might be the secret, if you like. If you've got a Neuralink chip, and imagine having that linked, these are called BCIs, brain-computer interfaces. Imagine having that linked to every bit of information. So in other words, we don't have to remember anything because we've got our Neuralink chip there. So we can remember everything we need to remember. Now just let's be creative. Wow. And again, you talk about Alzheimer's, you're forgetting someone's face, you're forgetting who that person is. But imagine having all that stored away in a hard disk attached to your brain or some sort of link there. Yeah. Or I might say all the information, maybe not all the information, that's a lot, but maybe all the relevant information or a link somewhere. You could just look up that information. Trivia nights, a bit boring, I suppose.
Trivia nights are going to become ridiculous with everyone getting perfect scores.
That's right. It's just who's got the latest Neuralink. So they've got the slightly faster. So now it's going to be the first one to answer.
Eco-friendly transport is all the rage now. And if you're on the water, then the most energy-efficient way to travel is to actually get up out of the water. Folks, water is a drag, and drag costs energy. So hydrofoils are the way of the future. Now, one ex-Apple engineer is looking to make his hydrofoil tech fairly standard in waterborne craft. Matt?
Well, a couple of things with hydrofoils. I remember
They're so impressive.
They are. I remember back in the early days of Sydney Harbour. I never got to go on it, but I used to go on the Sydney ferry sometimes. We'd be down in Sydney on holidays, and I'd see these rich people going on the hydrofoil. It was called the hydrofoil across there. And if you remember, it was kind of a V-shaped foil that it had at the bottom.
It had a normal hull that would sit in the water, but once it got going, it stood up on legs.
Yeah, and it was cool, but for whatever reason, they stopped that. They said it was too expensive or whatever, and you think, oh, well, hydrofoil.
There's no future in this.
That's right. And now, America's Cup boats, I remember watching them one day, and they're doing 70 kilometres an hour up on their foils, and they don't seem to go that fast before they're up on the foils. And then in the Olympics, did you see I'm not sure if it was called wakeboarding, what I would have called surf skis or
Yeah, but there's the NACRA event as well and the sailing as well. They all sort of lift up out of the water.
on their foils. But I love the ones where it was the wakeboarding foil. So it was driven by air. So they're basically sitting there or standing there on a surfboard device with one sail, and they're up on this foil. It looks so unstable because there's this little tiny thing sitting there.
That's right.
But it just seemed fascinating. So take away all that drag and you get boats that are very fast. Now, that's all fun for sailing or wakeboarding, whatever it might be. But obviously with boats as well, we're talking about maybe electric boats. We've seen some electric boats that have been around. But range is a bit of an issue because you've got a lot of weight in batteries to put on the boat. And obviously sitting all that on water, sure, Archimedes' principle still applies, but you're putting more of that weight, you're seeing that boat further down the water. So is that great? But if you can get a good range out of your boat without needing such a big battery, well, that makes sense. And take away all that drag, all that surface area from the boat's hull and put it up on foils, fantastic. So this, you're right, this is an ex-Apple engineer. He found himself in New Zealand and then he got stuck there with COVID-19. So he went, well, what can I do while I'm in New Zealand? So he started looking at some different things and he came up with boats. Can I do some boats that are on foil? So he's now got some boats that he's launched. Excuse the pun there, I didn't even mean that one. So, so they're a 9-metre boat, carry about 10 passengers, do about 25 knots, and a range of about 50 nautical miles. But the only way they get that range is because as soon as you get going, bang, pops up on the foil. So it does sit down as a normal hull in the water, but you start going, pops up on the foils, and away you go. So because you've got that reduced friction, you get pretty good range out of that boat. Now, I imagine we'll see more and more of this now. We've got a dam near us. People go skiing on that dam. But speedboats, they're going along at a fair old clip, and they're just sitting in the water, bouncing along in that water. But you actually get up and falls. It does two things. One, reduces the drag, but it also gives you a smoother ride because you're not relying on the surface of that water slapping along as you go on the water. You're actually still in the water, but your
thrust is coming from below the water's edge. Oh, sorry, below the water's surface.
That's right. And what you're balancing on
waves.
is just water that's below there rather than the waves on top. So it's actually an incredibly smooth ride as well. So it sounds like it's got good news all round. And I do begrudgingly admire New Zealanders sometimes. You know, there are little cousins across the ditch there. But I do find that New Zealanders are quite good with innovation, with software.
Seem to be very quick to take stuff on, don't they?
They do. And so it just is a bit of a fluke that this guy found himself in New Zealand, but probably a pretty good breeding ground to actually come up with some pretty innovative ideas. So anyway, I don't think it'll be that long. I give it 5 years, James. We'll see foil boats out on waterways near us. It'll be the norm. It'll be absolutely the norm. People will see an old-fashioned flat-bottomed tinny boat and they'll go, what's that thing over there?
Idiots.
Where's the
Living
foil?
in the past.
That's right.
We're hurtling through this 21st century and the global population continues to grow and grow and grow. We are a very needy species and none of our needs are more crucial, more fundamental than our need for fresh water. But then, while many of us take access to fresh water for granted, an adequate supply is no guarantee necessarily. So, Matt, any tech that is likely to improve wide-scale access to fresh water is a timely insurance policy, isn't it?
It is a timely insurance policy, and we have talked about this. We watched the movies like Mad Max when they're all fighting over fuel, and that's the big commodity.
Well, Waterworld was all about fresh water, wasn't it? Well,
that's the thing I was going to say. I think water is really where the battles will be fought in years to come. And I'm not talking about next year, I'm talking about decades, I suppose, away. But water is a big issue, fresh water. We've got a lot of water on the planet, obviously, but it's not really drinkable, so you've got to do something with it.
Tiny percentage, 3% is fresh water, but there's a reasonable percentage of that fresh water that's locked up as ice.
There you go. So it's quite difficult to get access to a lot of that water. So I think we'll see more of that. Now, sure, desalination plants, that type of thing might be a big thing, but also being able to extract water where there's not necessarily a large water body nearby. So I'm talking about, say, deserts and various areas like that. So this particular company has developed a solar-powered water harvester, and they've got the prototype they've already built. So they get about 3 litres of water per square metre per day in summer. Now, when I say in summer, it does use solar panels for its power, so obviously it's going to be able to have more power or more generation in summer. But what it does is it basically utilises moisture from the air and extracts water from the air.
So humidity's got to be a big issue here too.
It's got to be a big issue, that's right, but it still seems to be okay in fairly dry, less humid areas because there's still some moisture in the air.
Yeah.
And we would think about something that's high humidity, might have, say, 70 or 80%, maybe 90% humidity, but we think of low humidity as maybe 20 or 30% humidity. So there's still some moisture in the air. So it uses some natural plant processes. How many times we talk about that? Talking about taking something from nature and then trying to apply that. And so basically it's got a water-wicking fabric, a low-cost hygroscopic salt, and a plastic frame, and then some vertical microchannels filled with this salt solution to mimic a plant capillary action. So it uses all that. It uses some power, some absorbent material to absorb all that, and essentially each day you'll pull about 3 litres a day out of it. In winter, they say you can even get probably a minimum of 1 litre a day out of it as long as there's a bit of sun shining somewhere there. So quite incredible. The main part is there's not moving parts in there. So you've got this generation of water without maintenance. So you take this into an area that doesn't have water. You say, there's your water generation plant. See you later. We might come back in a year's time, see how it's all going. Again, we're talking about 2 to 3 litres of water per square metre. So you can imagine if you've got lots of square metres, then you've got lots of generation of water. So I see this being used in villages and areas that don't have access to clean drinking water, access to maybe a well somewhere that people have got to go and get water from.
For sure.
Set this up and away you go. And often we talk about it as well. In emergency situations, you have something come through, you have an earthquake, you have some type of emergency where your water supply is cut off or maybe power's cut off to the water treatment plant. Have some of these drop in place. At least you've got some basic drinking water.
Just sounds like a step towards survival. You know, our human species being resilient.
Being resilient and being clever as well.
Yeah. Automating the home sounds like a lovely idea to some people, but unlikely to go any further than that. Just an idea. And that is partially because of a lack of trust in the software, perhaps, or perhaps it's more of a function of a lack of confidence in understanding how the system works. The lack of trust that leaving a switch on permanently isn't going to have any negative repercussions. But do people understand how, well, sorry, I should say, it's not a question, but people do understand how wall switches work. So a device that physically flicks a switch at the point on the wall may just cause a little less anxiety. Matt, introduce us to the Switchbot.
There's smart homes, but we know there's often a lot of retrofitting required to make a smart home work.
Yeah.
And there's a little box that I've sometimes used as a Christmas present for people. It's called a useless box. And as the name suggests, go and Google it. It's quite fun. It's a rectangular box that sits there and it's got a single switch on it. You push the switch forward. When you do that, a little lid opens up, a little finger comes out and switches the switch off and it goes back into its shell. There's the Addams Family where you've got Thing, the hand thing.
Yeah.
It reminds me a bit of Thing. It's just a single finger, not a whole hand, but the finger comes out, switches the switch off, and then it goes. And so you sit there and you go, well, what is the point of this box? Well, there's no point. It's useless. You literally turn it on and it turns itself off.
It's an amusement.
It's an amusement. And I have given it to people as a Christmas present because I just love the concept of something being so useless. And they sit there for 10 minutes, so just switch it on, switch it off, switch it on, switch it off. It's just fascinating. But finally, I've found a use for the useless box, and not so much in its current format, but the Switchbot is exactly the same type of concept. It's a little device that you mount below a light switch. And when you program that up, it has a little finger that comes out and switches your switch on or off. So
it can press a button or it can flick one of those, what we would call them, rocker switches.
Rocker switch, that's right. So essentially, you turn your home into a smart home by putting one of these underneath various light switches throughout your home.
This has got boomer written all over it.
It does, doesn't it?
It's straight out of the 50s and 60s. Like, the future is going to look like this.
Because that is a part of the problem. In trying to get to a smart home, people have said, I've already got everything wired up. I don't want to go and replace light switches. I don't want to get an
There's also
electrician.
that distrust that, okay, I've got my house all wired up. Now I've just got to get on the app and make sure everything's, working on the app. But that means in order for an appliance to work, it's got to be on, and it's got to be on always. And I trust that the internet is going to do the actual physical switching it on and off.
Yeah, that's right.
Then I don't know, going on holidays after that, people get a bit nervous, or for whatever purpose, they're using it.
That's right. So this is basically saying leave everything in your house as it is. So you could apply this to PowerPoint. So, for example, if you want to be able to have a master switch to turn off power to your TV when you go away on holiday, so you're not having that ambient power sitting there, or you just want to be able to turn light switches on and off. You just want to be able to annoy the kids and have their light switches come on at 6 a.m. every day to say, get up and go and do some exercise before you go to school, whatever it is. But it's the most basic ever thing that I've seen to try and get your home to be a smart home. And when I looked at it, I went, oh, well, that's just stupid. I'm not even going to talk about that. And I started thinking about it. I went, actually, there are some people out there who would go, that'll do me. That's something that I can use in my home.
For it,
that's right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to go to every light switch. You might just say, I want this on a few common light switches. The kids always leave the switch on in the toilet or the bedroom.
You come home later on at night, you want the lights to be on.
Well, that's a good point too. For outside lights, you might be able to just drive down your driveway and just get onto your app and turn the Switchbot on. But it is, when you watch it, it's worthwhile after you look at the useless box, then you go look at the Switchbot, and it does look just like a little box that sits underneath the light switch, and a little finger comes out and just turns the button on or off depending on which way you program it.
Definitely got those futuristic shows from the 60s written all over it.
It does. It looks a bit ugly, so if you're worried about the look of your place, but let's face it, in my opinion, when I'm focused on delivering technology, I'm not worried about the looks. My wife or my kids sometimes think that some of the technology I use looks ugly, but I'm just worried about the output, the functionality. Yeah, that's right. Function over form, I say. I don't always win that argument.
During the 80s and 90s, there was a boom in toothbrush technology and dental hygiene. I can only imagine how decrepit people's mouths were prior to that. Now, it began with the angled head to reach the molars at the back more adequately, and then the shape of the brush went from a rectangle to a tapered arrowhead. Then the handle was given a non-slip grip. Oh, imagine all the injuries people had from a slipping toothbrush. And then the manufacturers went to town with the bristles, and all bets were off, folks. It all got just a little out of hand. And for about 30 years, toothbrush technology just went quiet, like we had hit the ceiling or something. Matt, you're about to open the floodgates again, though. This time it's all about accessorising.
And do you remember the ads they used to have, and I apologise for overseas listeners, I'm sure these were Australian ads only, where it was the flip-top
head.
Flip-top head, yes, that's right. So I used to say to my kids that if they didn't clean their heads properly, if they didn't clean their teeth properly, then they would get a flip-top head. So that's how we'd have to clean their teeth.
Get the surgery.
I don't know if that actually helped them, scared them, whatever, but they seem to clean their teeth okay. One of the things that I do love about toothbrushes, we've talked about different toothbrush technology, but we've left alone a little bit the most important part about our toothbrush, which is getting the toothpaste on there. And I've tried different technology over the years that rolls up a toothpaste roll to squeeze all that toothpaste out, or different ways of dispensing it.
There was a pump pack for a while where you just had to press the button.
That's right, all those things. But this is the best I've found so far, and it's almost a little practical for Tech Talk, because we normally talk about the future, but this is something you go and buy today, go online, find it, buy it, and have it in your bathroom tomorrow. And it seems a bit too practical. It's basically a toothpaste dispenser / holder. You mount it on your bathroom wall. It'd be some suction cups, I'd imagine, to maybe put on your mirror. And you put two different types of toothpaste in, and you hold your toothbrush underneath the spot, and it automatically dispenses some toothpaste on your toothbrush for you.
There you go, and you're wasting no extra energy having to squeeze a tube of toothpaste.
That's right. Not a single drop of energy used for that. It reminds me of a lot of bathrooms you go to where you hold your hand underneath the soap dispenser and that comes out automatically. So you hold your toothbrush under there. It's got a spot for 5 toothbrushes as well, so you can have a family of toothbrushes in there, a couple of different toothpaste. So if you've got some people in the family who like different toothpaste, you have 2 different toothpastes there. And most importantly, the thing I like about it is it says it'll get every last drop out of our toothpaste.
Well, that's the big one.
Exactly right. So squeeze your last, because imagine all the amount of toothpaste that's wasted across the year when toothpaste is thrown out with some left in that.
And I've got to share with you, I live in a family where they squeeze from the top.
Oh, what? Banish them.
And by the time you're getting to the end of that toothpaste tube, It has been through the ringer in a lot of ways, but when you just squeeze it from the bottom, it's just so much easier. But anyway, that's all by the by. This sounds like a revolution.
This is something you go and buy now. It measures about 26 by 8.5 by 17 centimetres, not too large, meant to basically make your bathroom a bit more efficient, take away the clutter. And I must admit, I'm about to order one. I'm not telling my wife about it till I get it. So
I was going to say, what do you give the person who's got absolutely everything? A toothpaste dispenser.
Exactly right.
Yes,
so,
with special holders for your toothpaste.
Have a look at it. Just to give you the brand name, it's called a Wekity, Wekity, Wekity toothbrush holder, wall-mounted dispenser. So,
I remember in year 7 I made a wooden toothbrush holder in woodwork.
Oh, right.
I presented it to my father for Father's Day, and he looked at it and said, "That's great. That's fantastic. What is it?" It had a wall mount and it had 6 spots to put your toothbrush and then a hole, and that was all the clues that he got.
Right.
You know, it probably wasn't thinking about his bathroom, probably wasn't thinking about toothbrushes and stuff when he got that gift.
He could have put on his desk for pens maybe as well.
He could have done many things with it.
Left him with that until a year later you told him what it was really for. So go have a look at that one. Get all your toothpaste out. It'll squeeze from the bottom, I guarantee, and get all that toothpaste out.
And on that note, it is time to pack away our toys, stack the chairs against the wall, and wait outside for our parents to come and collect us. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
Well, I am going to go and use that toothpaste dispenser, as I said, because I want to make sure my teeth are in such good condition I don't need to visit the robot
dentist. Yes, exactly. Well, I'm off to spend infinity on marking papers now. Catching cheats is one thing, but if AI wants to impress me, I need it to grade 2 classes of exam papers by Thursday with constructive feedback. In the meantime, pass me the coffee pot and my reddest pen and leave me to my torment. Thanks for tuning in once again, folks, to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Here at Tech Talk, we pride ourselves with bringing you the latest and greatest from the world of gadgetry and take no responsibility if you're listening to old episodes and shaking your head in retrospect. I'm your host, James Eddy, and as always, it's a pleasure to bring you a new episode each week. These chats are always much more fun with a bigger gang, though, so we actively encourage you to bring along friends and share the word about our tidy little podcast. Until next week, take care, and we'll see you then.